Glad to have you with us here on the Ravens Rundown. Tyler Jones here. Thanks for joining us. Coming up on today's show, we have the latest Baltimore Ravens news and rumors talking about DeAndre Hopkins wanting to play with Lamar Jackson. Also, we will have the update on Lamar Jackson as far as his arrival to OTAs and his role in Todd Monken's new offensive system in Baltimore. We'll go over all of that and more coming up in just a few moments. Before we get to any of that, though, folks, we are progressing towards 10,000 subscribers here on the channel. We have now passed up 9,600 subs. So that means that we're just a little less than 400 subscribers away from getting to 10,000 subs. And I'll be honest here, folks, we got some other growing channels here at Chat Sports. And if you want us to dedicate the resources to this channel to have live shows and watch parties and all that type of stuff, we got to do our part to grow this thing and keep the momentum here on Ravens Rundown as we bring you daily coverage, but we can do more than that. So, subscribe for free today if you love your Baltimore Ravens. If you're a diehard fan and want that Ravens content, we are the place for it here on the Ravens Rundown. Subscribe for free today. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Let's get to 10K. Let's start with DeAndre Hopkins. He spoke over the weekend about the idea of playing with Lamar Jackson. In fact, he kind of said that he wanted to play with Lamar Jackson. And if you read into this, it's pretty interesting to see what D-Hop had to say. Let's go ahead and show you what he had to say from the I Am Athlete podcast. I love Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is one of my favorite athletes since I've been watching sports. Obviously, he's one of the greats, and I'd be lying to sit here and say it wouldn't be an honor one day if my career allows me to play that long, to play with a great guy and a great QB like Lamar. Is one day coming up sooner rather than later? We'll see. But nonetheless, the numbers on DeAndre Hopkins. Last season, remember, he only played 9 games, was suspended the first 6 for PEDs. And when we did see him make his return, he still looked pretty dang good with over 700 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, 64 receptions. And you go back to what he did just a couple of years ago in 2020 with 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns, and the year prior to that, 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns with the Houston Texans. Is D-Hop the receiver that he was a couple of years ago? No, but he is still very, very good and would elevate things for this Baltimore Ravens team. Now, I know that we've been mostly talking about the trade idea for DeAndre Hopkins, of bringing him to the Baltimore Ravens. But what has picked up steam within the last couple days is that the Cardinals might just straight up say, you know what, let's release him, because maybe they don't want to pay all the money that he demands out there. And not finding any suitors out there. If he's on the open market, it's a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense for the Ravens to pick him up if he's sitting there as a free agent. I can understand if you don't want to not only pay him his current contract, but also give up assets. And the Ravens are in a position to do so, to take on that contract with where their cap situation sits. But if he's on the open market, taking less money and you don't have to give up capital, yeah, bring him in and already add to a wide receiving core that has Zay Flowers and OBJ and others. It'd be awesome to see for sure. So, should the Ravens add DeAndre Hopkins? What do you think? Now that we know that picking up in free agency is a possibility, what do you think about this idea? Let me know in the comment section. Why for yes, in for no. Should the Ravens add DeAndre Hopkins or not? It's our pinned comment today. You might get an ad break. If so, take advantage of it. Get your votes in. Tell me what you think. Why for yes, in for no. So, let's catch you up to speed on this situation, how we've got to this point. The Cardinals cutting DeAndre Hopkins is a possibility. With the high salary that he commands, it's worth noting that of that $19.45 million, it's not guaranteed. And if you're Arizona, a team that is trying to position themselves to get that number 1 draft pick, to get Caleb Williams or Drake May or whoever it may be, one of those top quarterbacks in next year's draft, isn't DeAndre Hopkins kind of going to hurt your cause of sorts, not only paying him, but also of trying to lose football games? So it might make sense to go ahead and move on from DeAndre Hopkins there. And what's also worth noting is we're looking at a report from Albert Breer a couple days ago from Sports Illustrated. And Albert Breer was reporting that right now, no teams, not a single one of the other 31 teams, are interested in a trade for DeAndre Hopkins. It seems like the momentum, if DeAndre Hopkins is going to get moved, is going to be a post-June 1 cut and be available in free agency, and that's where Baltimore could capitalize on this opportunity to bring him in. CBS Sports named the Ravens as a top destination for DeAndre Hopkins this week, and here's what they had to say. The Ravens addressed their receiver room this offseason by signing Odell Beckham Jr. and drafting Boston College wideout Zay Flowers, 22nd overall in round 1 of the 2023 NFL Draft. However, they have some cap space, $11.8 million in 2023, and are flush with draft capital. If Jackson truly wants to make good on his goal of 6,000 passing yards in 2023, adding Hopkins is a must. There's even a slight personal connection. Tight ends coach George Godsey was the Texans' offensive coordinator from 2015 to 2016 when Hopkins made his Pro Bowl debut with a 1,500-yard breakout campaign. If Hopkins were to agree to a revised contract, Baltimore could provide Jackson with one of the better pass-catching arsenals in the entire league in 2023. So, where do you think DeAndre Hopkins plays in 2023? You know, if he goes to free agency, obviously Baltimore isn't going to be the only team that will have interest there. Where does he go? Is it Baltimore? Is it still back in Arizona? Or is it somewhere else? Predict it for me in the comment section where you think DeAndre Hopkins is going to play next year. Folks, I want to encourage you to share today's video. And here's what you got to do. Click the share button, select the Twitter icon, click post to Twitter. If you tag me at Tyler Jones Live, not only am I going to retweet you, but if you follow me, I'm going to follow you back. The first 10 people that share today's show, I will show you some love on Twitter as well. So if you pat my back, I'll pat yours. Nice work by both of us here. So help support this show and get this out to as many of the Ravens flock as we can to be a part of what we're doing here in the Ravens Rundown for the latest happenings in your favorite team. Share the show today. We certainly would appreciate it. So the Ravens were pretty pleased to find out that Lamar Jackson returned to OTAs, day number 2, after missing the first day of OTAs. And we'll have a full breakdown of OTAs coming up later on in the week. But that certainly caught eyes of folks that he wasn't there for the very beginning. But he is there now. And I'll say this. When it comes to OTAs, I know if you're Lamar Jackson, typically speaking, one of these veteran players, you go through the OTAs and you're saying to yourself, you know, I've done this before. You know, I'm very involved in this organization, going to be here a long time. Why do I need to be here? Well, in the case of Lamar, in these offensive players, you have a new offensive system here with Todd Monken coming in and changing up things. And so this is a time of learning, a time to figure out what this Ravens offense is going to look like with this new scheme under Todd Monken. Todd Monken spoke recently about the roles and the learning that we're going to see from Lamar Jackson and OBJ in this new offensive scheme. This is what Monken had to say. I know Lamar's working hard. I know the guys who aren't here are working hard. They're pros. When they're here, they're here. We look forward to getting them here and getting them up to speed to what we're doing offensively. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, but it's football. When they get here and we'll get them up to speed. So what does Todd Monken's new offense look like? How does it differ from Greg Roman? Well, one of the things you're going to see with Todd Monken's offense is the ability to create space, to attack the entire field. That's something that he did effectively with his offensive scheme there with the Georgia Bulldogs in their 2 national titles in the emphasis on the tight end position. More on that here in just a second. Also, a strong run game is a huge key to Todd Monken's offense, of being able to use multiple backs and to run the ball that way, and running the football to open up the play-action passing game. I know it sounds cliche, but for Todd Monken, it's a big emphasis in what he wants to do. Also, what you're going to see is some air raid concepts. And I know for some folks, when you hear air raid in the National Football League, that kind of sounds alarming of sorts. You go back to what Todd Monken did when he was offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. It was an entire air raid scheme that he was doing back then over a decade ago. Things have changed. He's not running a complete air raid scheme, but you are going to see concepts at times of the air raid offense, and that could play to Lamar Jackson's strengths. And we've seen that the air raid offense doesn't necessarily mean you're going to throw the ball 40-plus times a game. We've seen air raids that can have a balanced approach, so something to think about there. Also, with the air raid in mind comes the tempo aspect. When we think air raid, we typically think no-huddle, fast-paced offense, right? Well, what Todd Monken has done a really good job of in his time at Georgia and as he's adapted in his previous time in the NFL is dictating tempo. Sure, you're going to see no-huddle at times, but ultimately Monken's going to do what's best for the situation. There might be times where it's best to run the football, wear out clock, be patient. Other times where you're playing fast-paced and, just all hands on deck, right? What is it that Sark says there in Texas? It's all gas, no brakes, right? You might see that from time to time with that Ravens offense, that they are going to adapt accordingly to the tempo. Might be fast at times, might be slow at times, but they're going to do what's best for the situation there. And then as far as tight ends goes, we mentioned attacking the entire field. That's where the tight ends come into play. And whether it's 12 personnel or beyond, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely involved in this offense, Charlie Kolar, I think I'm going to be very excited to see what he brings to the table after missing most of last year from Iowa State. I think that you have three tight ends that are all capable of opening up that middle of the field, not to mention what Zay Flowers is going to do in the slot. So look for that. This Monken offense, I think, is going to be a whole lot different than what we've seen more recently with Greg Roman, and should play to the strengths of Lamar Jackson. So watch out as they learn and adapt. It's going to be a lot of fun what's ahead for this offense under Todd Monken. I can tell you that much. One more note before we wrap up today. Josh Johnson is returning to Baltimore for his third stint with the organization, expected to compete there in the quarterback room. And what's noteworthy, too, is that the NFL just recently agreed to a rule change that will allow you to carry a third emergency quarterback if your other two quarterbacks go down and cannot return to a game. So all of a sudden, you may be feeling comfortable with Lamar and Tyler Huntley, but now you have to think about, okay, who do we want as that emergency quarterback? Johnson, that was kind of his role of some sorts in San Francisco last year, and we saw him in an NFC Championship game. Let's see what he does with his third stint, if he can earn that emergency quarterback spot. The Ravens offense, what's your confidence level heading into 2023? Tell me in the comment section, scale it for me 1 through 10, what your confidence level in Todd Monken's new offensive system in the personnel is. Let me know what you think. Hit me up on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Tyler Jones Live. You can find me there, and I'll see you next time right here on Ravens Rundown.